Good evening, everyone, and happy Juneteenth. My name's Gavin. When we think about freedom as Americans, we normally think of the freedom to wake up in the morning and do what you please, the freedom to pursue an education and build a better life for yourself, the freedom to date who you want and not have a second thought about it, the freedom of speech and the freedom to assemble, to vote and to prosper. However, to a slave, freedom was the liberation from the back-breaking labor that they were faced with day in and day out. To me, freedom is both. When we celebrate Juneteenth, we think about how far we have come from the disgusting practice that was slavery. We think about the time it took to find out we were free and the struggle that we still face today. We celebrate our liberation, our endurance, our culture, and our American history. The rich and truthful history of our labor, our work, and our contribution to American history. As we celebrate, we will never forget that slavery was a practice in which people were entrapped, bought, sold, exploited. It wasn't indentured servitude. Although Africans weren't the only slaves in history, American slavery was different in the sense that it was deadly and it lasted for a lifetime. Africans weren't considered as people. Their children and their children's children would be born into slavery, and for the next 250 years, they will be facing bondage and brutality on levels unheard of by anyone in history. So, why do we celebrate Juneteenth? On January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, ordering Confederate states to free all slaves still in captivity and ending the slavery in the lives of 4 million people. Although the proclamation was in effect, slavery deep in Confederate parts of the South, such as Texas, still went on for almost 3 years after that proclamation was issued. June 19th, 1865, just about 2,000 Union troops stormed onto Galveston Bay in Texas and announced that upwards of 250,000 enslaved black people were to be freed by executive decree, ending slavery in all parts of the United States and giving us the holiday that we now know as Juneteenth. Freedom is never given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. A famous quote by Martin Luther King Jr. I say this to highlight a part of slavery that does not get enough shine when the conversation is brought up, which is rebellion. Slaves all throughout American slavery would organize rebellion and overtake their plantations, effectively freeing themselves. But please do not for a second think that acts of rebellion solely reside in violence and taking up arms against someone. Because a slave learning to read and write was illegal, an act of rebellion could be seen as a slave learning to read or write. Though some rebelled and were successful, not all were so lucky. Many of the slaves in captivity never lived to see the day that they were freed. They never got a true pursuit of happiness, a chance to get an education, or to start a family without it being torn apart. So, to honor them, if you haven't already, I urge you to take a deep dive and immerse yourself, not in just the history of the struggle that they went to build this country, but the history of Africa that preludes the transatlantic slave trade. The history of the kingdoms, the kings, the queens, the artists, the engineers, and the scientists that thrived in the continent before American slavery was ever a thought. On this day that represents freedom, I want you all to take up a new mindset towards freedom in this country. To find solutions to social issues in America, we must adopt the mindset that there is no us and them. There is just us. Because until none of us are burdened by issues such as racism, all of us are. As a nation, we have come a long way in targeting racial injustice in this country. But until we adopt a mindset that allows us to come together in unity against these problems, we are free, but we can never truly be free if some of us have to deal with these injustices alone. There is no they, just us. Our celebration is in the embrace of how we remain valiant and united as Americans. In celebration of this day, let us look toward the future with remembrance of how far we have come as a nation and ambition of how far we will go, together in unity. Thank you, and happy Juneteenth.